Hi, I'm Franklin, and this is Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. How I Graduated from Law School is a series of interviews with practicing attorneys and legal professionals to find out more about their career journey. The purpose is for you to hear about how other legal professionals became employed and started their career following law school, or in some cases, relaunched their careers at a later stage in their professional life. It's not just young lawyers that we'll be talking with, but attorneys across all levels of practice areas and experience. The purpose isn't to try and prove the legal job market is perfect, because it's not, or convince you it's easy to get a job and there are a ton of jobs out there, because there simply aren't. However, I do hope you gain some insights, ideas, tips, or other pieces of advice that can help you and your law school strategy. Because I do believe that if you work hard and follow the advice we share, you'll be closer than ever to graduating from law school with a job. On this episode, we have attorney Travis Wise from San Jose, California. Hey, Travis.
Hi, Franklin. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I appreciate you taking the time. So I'll go ahead and kick it off right over to you with the first question. Why did you go to law school? And then what did you do before you started studying law school?
Yeah, so I went straight through from undergrad to law school, kind of a traditional law school student in that regard. I originally wanted to be a psychologist, actually, and so that was my first major in undergrad. And my best friend's mom at the time told me that I gave poor advice, but I like to argue with people, so she thought I would make a better lawyer. I thought that lawyers were super smart, memorizing things, which I was horrible at. But I did some research, talked to some lawyers, and I thought, I think I like this. So switched my major to political science and went to law school.
Great. So where did you go to undergrad?
I went to undergrad at San Jose State University, and then I went to law school at Santa Clara Law School.
So you transitioned straight from undergrad into law school, is that correct?
Yep, I went straight through. Yeah.
Perfect. So now the question that everybody wants to know, did you graduate from law school with a job? And then if so, how did you get that job right out of law school?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. When I graduated from law school in 2000, right as the dot-com bubble was bursting, and I live and work and I went to school right here in Silicon Valley. So we felt it was the epicenter for the dot-com bubble burst. My law school, Santa Clara, focused on IP law and high-tech law at the time and still does today. And I don't have a science background, so I wasn't going the patent route. I really, in law school, didn't know what I wanted to do afterwards. Working for a company sounded exciting and stable, but I didn't know what that meant. And of course, nobody becomes corporate counsel straight out of law school. So I didn't know. In my third year, the economy was starting to decline, and jobs were becoming more scarce. I was able to get on-campus interviews with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Arthur Andersen, which were two of the big, at the time, five consulting firms. I had barely heard of them. I didn't know what they did, but they were the only two companies that were interested in interviewing me. So, of course, I interviewed. They both made me job offers, and I accepted the one with PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I started my career.
So what would you say you did during law school, besides obviously interviewing during those interviews? What would you say led up to that and making you eligible to even get into the doors of those places?
I kept a really wide open mind about what my future legal career would be. I was not in the top 10% of my class. I was not even in the top third. I was very much an average student. My extracurriculars were pretty average. Law school was, I wouldn't say that it was hard for me. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't at the top of the class. And so, I interviewed a lot of places, especially through on-campus interviews, but I really just kept an open mind. I was willing to entertain anything in terms of post-law school careers. There were a few things I really didn't want to do, like divorce law and things like that, but I kept a very open mind.
Great. Yeah. So were there specific internships that you took or steps that you took to get a broad range of experience to make yourself more of a viable candidate?
One thing that really helped me was in my first year summer between 1L and 2L, I knew I wasn't going to get a law firm internship. We have Stanford and Hastings and Berkeley right here in the Bay Area, and the competition is really fierce. So I did a study abroad my first summer. I did that in Hong Kong. It had a guaranteed job component or a guaranteed internship component with the study abroad. So that frankly looked great on my resume, and that was the talking point that all of my interviews gravitated towards later. So, and it was a fun experience. So that was, in hindsight, a good move on my part for that first year summer, because I wouldn't have been able to get anything better locally. My second year summer, when I returned basically from that program, in my second year, I started working for a nonprofit community legal aid type organization doing housing, rental defense, and public benefit programs for people who can't afford lawyers. I did that my entire second year. My second year summer, I did it full time, and I did it most of my third year. I knew I didn't want to do public benefit law long term. It just wasn't going to be able to let me live in this area easily. But it was great to do during law school, and again gave me some real world experience that really helped out with my resume when I was doing interviews.
Perfect. Yeah. So you mentioned you started out at Price Waterhouse, right?
I did. So I knew before I graduated that I was going to work there because they made me the offer through on-campus interviews. I was hired to do corporate tax. I did not know what that meant.
That was my next question. Did you have
no clue. I then took tax classes in law school because I still had a full semester. So I was able to rearrange some electives. I was looking up on the internet, just like, what have I signed up for? And then, of course, graduated, did the bar exam, and then started following the bar exam.
So backtracking a little bit, how many jobs would you say that or internships and jobs would you say that you applied for throughout the course of looking for the jobs right at the beginning?
Definitely over 100. I had a spreadsheet of every place that I applied for, both internships during 1L, 2L, and during the summers, as well as full-time jobs. And I remember that there were well over 100 rows on that spreadsheet, and it was probably quite a bit more than that. A good chunk I was just outright rejected for. I probably interviewed for about 10 to 15% of those, and got, I think I had a few other offers at some things that I just had no interest in doing, like family law. So I was glad that I had another option. Yeah.
Wow, that's great advice right there, to actually apply for something even though it might not be what you want to be in, but that way you at least have an option to say no to it.
I applied for everything. I again, and I believe that today too. The keeping a wide or casting a wide net for people, unless somebody is like a patent lawyer and they know exactly what they're going to do. For me, I didn't have that luxury, so I just had to cast a very wide net.
So it sounds like you obviously utilized your school's career services network, but did you also reach out to recruiters or local attorneys that you knew as well?
On-campus interviews were a good chunk of where I was finding the leads. At my school, that was usually just successful for kind of the top tier, though, of students, and I found that to be true also. So I was going through career services at the time. It was a binder of jobs that I was literally flipping through and applying to. Nowadays there's obviously online ways to do that are more efficient. But yeah, it was the equivalent of going through LinkedIn or similar things and just looking for anything.
Wow, so you had binders of jobs. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was literally.
Were there any times that let me back up just a little. So you were at PwC. What did the transition look like? Because I obviously know now you've transitioned away, you're not with them anymore. So what did that process look like of changing a job at that point in your career?
Yeah, you mean from PwC to Google?
Yes, correct. Spoiler alert.
I was at PwC for 9 years, and it was tough. at first because I didn't know what I was doing. So there was a very steep learning curve. But as time went on, I enjoyed it more as I knew more what I was doing and kind of rose through the ranks of the career. I was not looking to leave, but I also didn't particularly want to make partner, which would have been my next promotion. That was just a lifestyle that at the time I just didn't find attractive. So timing was good. Somebody forwarded me a job opening at Google. I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's exactly what I do, but they only hire super smart people, but I'll apply, just for the fun of it. And one thing led to another, and I ended up switching jobs there, and that was in 2009.
Great. So what resources did you use to make sure that you stay like current? Because obviously as right out of school, you were in a practice area that you took some electives in, but you didn't really have any experience in. So what were some resources and fast track to learning that you did?
Yeah, that's a good question because the on-the-job training was geared more towards accountants, and I don't have an accounting background. So when I say steep learning curve, it was as steep as I could have imagined. And frankly, if the economy had been better, I might not have stuck around. But again, in the early 2000s, the economy was just really bad, and there were no other jobs. So it all worked out in the end. But but what I did do was, start with the basics because, again, I really didn't know my specialty area. And so starting with basically like Wikipedia for, just trying to understand terminology and things like that. The nutshell books, that I would have used in law school for classes. I think I still have that at my desk, actually, for corporate taxation. Dummy's Guide to Accounting. I mean, I knew that I needed to start with like lowest common denominator stuff before I could work my way up. Now, once I got over kind of that initial learning curve, I was able to then understand and absorb and then eventually teach and implement, much more complicated stuff. But I was very modest in acknowledging that I didn't know what I was doing initially. And so starting out with just bare bones basics.
Yeah, definitely. So I that resonates with me because I actually have like a music licensing book that's like really that thick on my desk that I got during law school as one of my books for class, and it's also right there on my desk because it's so practical to reference. And I think when I first started, I was relying on local CLEs, and then obviously we have like companies like edX and other things like that where I can go and learn because I was on the same side. I didn't know anything about financing, yet here I am in a job where I'm dealing with royalty payments and accounting and all that kind of stuff. So there are definitely a lot of free resources as well. Even iTunes U has some great resources for those types of courses that you can just take on your own. So that's definitely great advice to keep your law school books, some of them.
The other thing that I found really valuable that saved me repeatedly was having good mentors. And some of those mentors were at the firm that I worked for and some were outside the firm. But I had not just one, but several mentors who I sought out because of their both technical skills and also just their career guidance skills. And I attribute probably more to those people than any other factor in terms of me being able to just survive, until I really kind of knew what I was doing. And in the firm that I worked at, PwC, we had assigned mentors. And fortunately, mine worked out well. But I've always encouraged people, if you ever get assigned a mentor or a coach and it's not working out, this is your career. Find one.
Excellent advice. Yes, mentors are very valuable. What about bar associations? Were there local bar associations or national, or not even for attorneys, were just like maybe something within the realm of tax? Were there any associations that you were able to join?
Yeah, so we do obviously have a county bar association here that I believe even has a tax subsection.
Oh, wow.
And of course, our state bar, the California State Bar, has a tax subsection. I'll be honest, I've not been active in either the local or the state or the national bar. There are other career groups. There's a group called Tax Executives that that I belong to, and there's other kind of networking groups like that, particularly here in the Bay Area, that I belong to and that I've found very useful. The bar associations, though, for one reason or another, I just never really got too involved with those.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so were there any times that you struggled or faced any challenges when looking for a job?
Oh, many. In fact, when I think about looking for a job, it was all one big struggle. That was very demotivating and demoralizing. At one point, I'll just share this one story because it was very, frankly, typical of my experience. My law school would often host mixers with local firms, and so I went to one of these mixers, and it was a big firm, and they had a nice spread of cheese and stuff like that. And one of the older lawyers came up to me and was asking me questions and asked me about my undergrad, and I said, "Oh, I'm a political science major." And he said, "Oh, we only hire people with science backgrounds. I don't know why you're here." And as a law student, I just felt so demoralized at that point, and I just left, kind of with my tail between my legs, and felt like, gosh, this is not working. And crossed that one off on my spreadsheet. So that firm later went bankrupt. So it was tough, and I've talked to a lot of other law students who went through it in the '07, '08 economic crisis, where there were just no jobs, and it is really hard. And things are better right now, but the economy goes in cycles. And the tip, again, to go back to what I said earlier that I followed and then I've told other people to follow, is if you're in that situation, you've got to think broad. There are things that at my current company at Google, we have a lot of lawyers, and we have lawyers doing things that I never knew that that's what lawyers did. I never knew that lawyers did what I do when I was in law school. And law school tends to teach a fairly narrow view of the law. Especially when you think about your bar prep classes, like that's a pretty narrow view of what lawyers do. And there's a lot of jobs that are outside the scope of that.
Excellent, excellent advice. So with a company like Google, you obviously have a very large legal department and team, multiple teams. So what has it been like being a part of that and being able to see all the different areas of law that are opened up for people to just, like you said, that you probably never even heard of before? What has that exposure been like?
It's been a lot of fun because, like I said, I almost every day I'm talking with other lawyers who are doing things that I never knew that lawyers would do things like that. Legal issues involving self-driving cars and just all the different things that my company does has been a lot of fun. And sometimes I look at their jobs and think, wow, how did they fall into that? And they basically have a similar story to me of just kind of, you don't go to law school to study that sort of thing. So it's just something that you kind of fall into. And I think that's how most of us ended up in these roles. Is it wasn't something where we trained for it in school.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So if you were a law student all over again, don't want to have bad flashbacks for anybody, but if you had to go back and do it all again now, what would you think you would be able to do as a law student to gain that kind of exposure? Is it through maybe local bar associations or going to networking events, or what kind of advice would you give to a law student?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, there are some law students who know exactly what they're going to do afterwards. Again, kind of a science major who's going to become a patent lawyer. That's great. They're pretty much set in terms of that path. For the bulk of us who don't have that path, it's a couple things. One, it's keeping that broad open mind about careers, because what you may be doing 10 years from now probably or maybe doesn't exist today in terms of a field. And so just really keeping that open mind about what direction your career goes. Secondly, like you said, bar associations, I think that's on the broad topic of networking, which was a word I hated in law school, and I still kind of hate because it's just, what is that? But it's finding mentors, right? It's finding lawyers who are practicing, who you can have lunch with once every few months and just talk with and get guidance with. It's certainly attending bar association meetings and just meeting people and talking with them and having informational interviews. that is what networking is. It's not just attending these functions where you hand out business cards. There's got to be more substance to it than that. Handing out the business cards is nothing. You've got to get the substance in there. So yeah, I think that it's all of those things.
Definitely. Yeah. So one last question. If you were talking with a law student right now and you wanted to give them one piece of advice, whether it's something that you've learned from interacting with law students or just anything, what piece of advice would you give to law students now, or somebody that just took the bar, still looking for a job?
Yeah. I would tell them to relax. I've met, particularly when the economy was tougher or people were having trouble finding a job, and they were so uptight and tense about the situation that it showed it in the interview. And I think that they were just thinking of things too narrowly. So I think it's just take a step back, relax, realize that the practice of law is this hugely wide field that you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of, and do what you can to find the rest of the iceberg and interview in those jobs and network with people in those jobs. Spend your spare time doing the networking, which again is informational interviews and things like that. But really take a long-term view of this. You're going to be working for several decades in a field that may, as I said, may not exist today. And so just kind of taking that holistic view to a career.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis, for taking the time to talk today and sharing pretty awesome insights and experiences.
Thank you very much, Franklin. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you for watching. And make sure you subscribe for future episodes of How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. We'll see you next time.